show. I'd say a great show. I'm very happy with the shows I do with this podcast, and I've been enjoying getting back into doing it. I know it's been wasn't very consistent for a little while, and I'm glad to be getting back into the rhythm of putting the show out every week. So today on the show, we're going to talk to a comedian and club owner, Mo Fathelbab. Mo is the owner of the Experimental Comedy Gallery in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, here in New York City. And he's a guy who's a guy who has a very specific goal and a very specific environment that he's trying to create with the comedy venue, the Experimental Comedy Gallery. And it was great to talk to him because I don't get a lot of face-to-face with venue owners for long periods of time. So it was illuminating to talk to Mo and to hear sort of the purpose-driven goal that he had when he created the experiment. So we're going to talk to Mo in a little bit. Just real quick, before we get into the interview here, I want to plug a couple shows I'm going to be doing at the Experiment. On October 24th at 8 p.m., I'm going to be doing I'm going to be telling a couple stories on my friend Benel Jermosin's Fresh 15 show. And then at 9:30, I'm going to be the roast master for the roast of Dr. Frankenstein, which will also be at the Experiment. I'm going to be dressing up as Frankenstein's monster, which will not be the first time I have played Frankenstein's monster on a roast. I am a type, and I accept it. So if you need me to be Frankenstein for you, I'm available, and I can do my own makeup. So those are going to be October 24th at the Experimental Comedy Gallery, and let's go there now. I went to Williamsburg to chat with Mo, and it was a really great time. So let's go to my chat with Mo right now. Process to get it recorded when I do it at my house, because this is how the business works.
That's how the sausage is made.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But no, I love what you're doing, and I haven't known you too long. Like I think we met earlier this year, and then I haven't. Yeah. And then it's been a couple months, but I like what you're doing in that you have your own space and are kind of doing your own thing and being your own boss. Because I think I don't know if you agree with this, but I feel like that's where where comedy's going, is where everyone gets to be their own boss, and that's how you do it.
That's at least creating content. Now, where the money is, that's different. Yeah. But at least in the ability of doing your own thing without someone else saying no. Mm-hmm. That's I think at the end of the day, I think that's well. It's also like discovering a niche somewhere in comedy,
exactly,
and going, I'm comfortable here. I like doing this, mm-hmm. and then and doing it also without someone saying no because you are a woman, or because you are a black man, or because you're a gay, or whatever. All these different.
Like you have people in positions of power who control the money, who have their own outdated ideas.
Or control the door to get in.
Exactly, control the door.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And you'll have guys that are like, it's like at certain clubs you'll see lineups, and people have complaints about lineups where it's like, mm-hmm. there's a token black guy and there's a token woman, but it's not by accident. That's the problem. You see a lot of old school dudes would be like, well, he does material that black guy does material because, but it fits the tourist crowd that comes in. You're kind of like, right. They're not looking for someone to be authentic. They're looking. That's the token black guy, and that lady talks about being a lady, but she doesn't talk about her period too much. Mm-hmm. And you see people there are people that get passed at clubs, and then there are rules put upon them. So there are comics that are like,
right.
Man, I
where
passed.
You kind of have. Yeah, you kind of have to fit a mold.
Yeah, they're very excited that they're at a club, but then then like, well, at least my jokes weren't too black or whatever. It'd be like a weird statement thrown out, and you kind of like, ugh.
That's crazy. Maybe I'm not spending it. I haven't spent too much time in the clubs lately, but man, I've never.
Well, it might not necessarily happen
never
to you.
Thought like that.
Maybe
no,
not,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
That's the thing. Also, like I've spoken to enough people of color and women from all walks of life that in comedy that have expressed an astonishment, but an astonishment in a WTF way. Like, what?
Exactly. It's like this is really how it works. People think like this. So there are people that will say to a woman, don't like be a woman, but don't be too much of one, or don't be like.
Or someone gets passed, and they're like, well, we like what you do because you're not doing too much of this other thing that might alienate the crowd that comes in, the crowd that we're trying to attract. And
right.
Like, oh, we're trying, and I get it. It's a business. They're trying to sell.
Yeah. You're trying to get people through the door so you can get them drunk.
They're selling tickets. They're selling at least 2 drinks per person. They're selling most likely meals to groups of people.
Yeah.
And those people they don't want to think to a certain extent. They want to hear want to hear some funny stuff. And not too crazy,
not too deep,
not too deep. Yeah,
not too deep or not too challenging. Because if they get too drunk, they're not gonna have the ability to comprehend this really detailed opinion you have on this,
even if it's funny.
Topic.
Yeah,
even if it's funny,
which is why then you see interesting. You see right now the current clashes happening in the comedy scene in terms of content. Some people are like, or the context of jokes, whatever it is.
Sure.
There was even in the alt scene. So there's I don't know. You probably heard about the white guy that dropped the N-bomb at an open mic a few months ago, and they got punched in the face.
Yeah, I heard
about that. And then wrote
this
whole diatribe about like, where's freedom now and stuff like that. And then he's upset that he got. Obviously, rightfully so, he was upset that he was hurt. But then, in the larger scheme of things, he was like, "Well, because I'm white now, I can't say the N-word." Well, I don't think so. You don't think you should, but what's the context of it?
No, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like everyone who cries like PC police or like freedom of
it's all
expression is being suppressed. A lot of those people are assholes. Like they're just. They're assholes and they're being rude and a lot of times it's the joke that they're trying to defend. I'm like, really? You're going to go to bat for that one? Mm-hmm. It's kind of amazing because I think and maybe I'm wrong on this. I think for the longest time, the comedy scene was viewed as this almost sort of underground club from society where the rules of maybe polite society didn't apply. Yeah. And now there's people now who are trying to say, well, maybe a few of the rules of polite society could apply, like, people should not feel like unsafe in a comedy club or a comedy venue, things like that. And then these old people with their kind of outdated ideas are just like, fuck that. I want to be terrible.
I think it's a combination of a couple of things. One thing is that I think in the comedy scene, comedy producers, comedians themselves, and so forth.
Yes,
want to have it both ways sometimes. We're the truth tellers, but don't hold us accountable for our jokes. And I think that confuses the layman. That's the problem. Like if someone who's not in comedy, and they're like, well, that person's telling me he's a truth teller or she's a truth teller. And then, but don't hold us accountable for our jokes. And I don't mean to be like a BuzzFeed blogger that goes and after SNL performers, who wrote dumb jokes 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. But people don't understand that, and it's not the fault of the so-called social justice warriors or whoever, the PC, whatever label we want to throw in.
It seems like there's like a huge misunderstanding. There's on some side of the. There's one side of the social justice community that I think feels that everything a comedian says they actually mean.
Yeah.
And there's lots of comedians who say things they don't mean at all.
Not at all. Yeah, it's an act. All. Yeah.
It's just for an act, or it's just for this will get a laugh in this way.
Yeah. But I still think that confuses people.
I think so.
And it's not that people aren't They just don't know. It's not that they're not bright. It's just they just don't know. It's like the whole Kurt Metzger thing, and he's defending the idea. Like he doesn't want people to go on Facebook and to go after this guy without proof or whatever. The guy who is attacking women, and he becomes the lead story instead of the attacker. So then I have to explain then to my mom, who is a comedy fan, but she's not in the scene.
Exactly.
It's sort of like, no, we're not harboring rapists. No, we're not telling people to not talk. Or whatever it is, like, because she doesn't understand.
Exactly.
I mean, she's a small business owner. She's in her 60s. She just wants to hear the joke and then go home, or
exactly.
or just turn her mind off. But all these other issues that we're having these arguments about, obviously she's concerned as a woman that there was a rapist that was loosed in a comedy scene, and the idea that Kurt might be defending him even though he wasn't, but still like just going after feminists and whatever.
It was he kind of went on what kind of a sloppy tirade that had a couple of good points, but also pissed off a lot of people, which caused a lot of people to miss the kernels of.
Well, still rightfully so, because if you're on the outside and you're seeing a man make an argument in that particular manner, you're gonna be upset.
Exactly.
You're gonna what the and it becomes a bigger issue, and I think a lot of what we're kind of in really comes down to trying to create, at least here with the experiment, is trying to create a scene, at least a sliver of a scene or a part of a scene, where people can get to explore what they want to explore here, without the hindrance of someone going, these are social justice warriors, whatever.
Right.
Like it's giving them that room, and at the same time, hopefully, when the audience comes in, they understand, because I think our audience is a bit more sophisticated than most. I say that as I gladly take their money. And
I hear it, because this is like, because we're in the cool part of Williamsburg. I think the people who are here and are into comedy have that little bit of sophistication.
Well, yeah, I think people are comedy fans. I think the people that come to our shows are mostly comedy fans, and I can tell the difference between comedy fans and people who are here just because. And comedy fans get it. Comedy fans are okay with watching someone going up there and doing a character who might espouse certain horrible beliefs,
right?
In an old school Colbert sort of way, or if you are. I mean, even the divides on the left, for example, you had the Bernie versus Hillary, or now it's Hillary versus Jill Stein sort of group. Seeing even that, because people get really touchy about that.
Right.
Seeing somebody who might not necessarily be on the very, very red end of the left.
Right.
Be okay with someone making fun of Jill Stein or Bernie Sanders or whatever. And I think it's, we're beginning to do. I think we're trying to have a way where people understand that, yeah, sure, maybe some of these people are truth tellers, but these are jokes. We're here for a good time.
Yes,
that's what it is. Yeah.
Then that's the perfect understanding for a good comedy audience. I think
it's nuanced, but we're trying to get to.
That's the thing. Yeah. It's so nuanced.
Yeah, I don't want to be in the position where it's like Jerry Seinfeld or Chris Rock going, "Oh, we can't do colleges anymore." Well, maybe it's because you aged out, had nothing to do. Had nothing to do with the PC-ness or the un-PC-ness of your set. Just that those people want to hear Aziz. Or those people want to hear Amy Schumer or somebody.
Amy Schumer or Kevin Hart.
Yeah,
guys. Guys. No, I agree with you, because like you hear comedians that do colleges a lot too talk about, because they're 18.
Yeah.
The kids that are going to the comedy show, and I was that kid before I started doing comedy. They're 18. They can't drink yet legally. They don't have a car probably.
That's why they're stuck on campus, and they're so happy that you're there.
They're stuck on campus, and they're happy that you're there, but they don't have. They're not your age. They haven't seen the shit that you've seen yet. But they need a good time. But they need a good time. I think there's something.
Also, maybe your joke's not funny.
That too, because like, I don't know the last time, I can't remember the last time I talked to someone who was like 18 or tried to relate to them, but my girlfriend's like only a couple years younger than me, and every time she hasn't heard of like a band that's considered like a landmark band in the history of popular culture, or like that she hasn't seen the Shawshank Redemption, I literally am like close to having an aneurysm. So I could see that sort of, if you're talking about a 30 or late 20s comedian trying to talk to 18-year-olds, you got to go to their level.
Yeah, I mean,
also, I do colleges because they pay money.
They pay money, and it's good money. But the notion is, everything seems to be tangential, but they're all part of this one larger issue of knowing who your audience is. This is the niche. This is the niche that we're in. So we know, for example, we do a show here called Just Pussy. It's an all-female show. It's hosted by Eve Pizer and Melissa Rocha. And it's mostly the women on the lineup there are a lot of like standard stand-up comedians, but a lot of times, I would say mostly storytellers or people who've written for BuzzFeed, so essayists and
long form
humorists.
Yeah,
it's still funny, but that's always packed. It's always a sold-out show here, and that audience, a good chunk of them come to other shows, and I've recognized people that come to other shows here, and that's a perfect example of a show that works here that might not necessarily work at a bigger club or at a more established club, because they're also I don't know to the extent, and again, it's not to belittle Jezebel or XO Jane or whatever, but a lot of the writers contribute to sites like those. I don't know what the readership is, but I don't know if that readership in particular would be interested in going to Broadway Comedy Club, for example.
Oh, I
don't know. Think so. But it works here because it's it just they know that they're in a space where they're having a good time. It's safe. We got a guy behind the counter or a girl behind the counter, depending on who's working that night, being respectable. No one's hitting on them. No one's being a jerk.
Right.
No one's going on stage going, these broads, like the next girl here, what an ass, and bringing her, introducing, those guys are like, well, she's funny for a girl. Bring her up there.
Yeah.
And just the whole context of it eventually, just the whole package as it's delivered to the audience, they like it and it works and it's safe and it fits. But that's not to belittle Broadway Comedy Club, for example. And I'm sorry that I used their name. I'm just using them as an example.
I get the idea.
They might have a ladies' night, for example, there, and they probably have. I know Greenwich sometimes does, and so forth. And these other bigger clubs, but that's a different audience.
Yeah,
that's an audience that came from out of town. That's an audience that's in Times Square.
Business like people who work in Midtown.
Yeah,
sometimes.
So if you're a Midwestern,
it's a different vibe.
If you're a Midwestern mom in her 50s with her kids, where you're going to get a Broadway, but you might not necessarily be familiar with some of the blogs that will lead you down here to the experiment to watch a show called even just the title called Just Pussy might be a bit.
Right,
for certain people, or certain mindsets,
for the person who likes to laugh but isn't well versed in all of the tomes of the stand-up comedy world.
Yes,
they'll go to something called Broadway Comedy Club and go, oh, okay, this will somewhere in here my idea of what's funny will probably be. Whereas at other in places like your place, and I want to talk a little bit about the creation of the experiment.
Okay.
It's not a, and this is the wrong way to say this. It's not a broad generalized comedy experience. It's more specific, but it's more rewarding for those people that enjoy it.
Yeah, well, I don't think we're a broad. I don't think. And again, it's nothing. It's not slamming a generalized comedy.
It's just
experience.
a different mindset.
It is a different mindset, but it's creating a niche within the broader apparatus of comedy, and going, we're good at this. our comedians are good at this. The people that come here and perform are good at this.
Yes.
You're going to like this if this is something that's in your wheelhouse. We hope you like this if this is something you've never experienced before. On the other hand, we're not going to, shit in the night on bigger clubs or shit on the idea of broader comedy, because I'm a fan of a lot of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's carving up a little place. This is our little nook.
Yeah.
It's
like our artisanal sort of nook.
Yeah, this is our nook,
in a way.
And hopefully, and to a certain extent, not be criticized for creating that nook.
Mm-hmm.
The context, maybe we can have a discussion about it, but not to be criticized for creating that nook, because right now there is no place or there's no outlet for a lot of these people, a lot of these comics to perform at these other venues.
Oh, no.
And that's kind of where we're at. And I think a lot of the small when I compare the smaller venues, I'm just saying more the alt venues.
Yeah, you're like 50-seat places, you're 100-seat places
they're
compared to your like 300.
Yeah, that's the point is to create, like, if you're going to QED, you want that small intimate experience in Astoria. You're not, and they're trying to create their own little nook in the comedy scene. Same thing at the Creek. They're creating their own nook in the comedy scene.
Yes.
And the three places, including us mentioned, we're not Caroline's. We're not. I mean, we're not.
Yeah.
Gotham. So we don't have the presence, for example, or the brand of a space of those spaces, for example. But they're the big dogs. They're the ones that are getting, guys as diverse as Paul Rodriguez to Dave Chappelle.
Yeah.
And the hope is that we can create an opportunity for the misfits to perform, and then eventually they can get their way to a space,
to those big
spaces.
Places.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. Then I think that's an important thing to have, especially in New York, where if places like the Creek or QED or Experiment or in use or
I know, I guess to a certain extent. I know that they're mostly they do a lot of improv, but there's quite a few character shows.
Yeah. And for if without places like that, then it's just like the old days where everyone's like, go sign up at the 50-person open mic at the club and wait till 3 a.m. or to do the Terrible Bringers. It's people creating their own opportunity. So how does and then I'll start here and then we'll go back a little bit. Where does the genesis of creating the experimental comedy gallery begin?
Well, the experiment itself started. It was the experiment I could tell you where it got started.
Okay.
It got started at the Mission Cantina in Los Angeles. In late August of 2013. It was me and two other buddies. We co-founded the experiment, Ben Trandom and Derek Smith. And the experiment came out of our general dislike of a lot of what was going on in the comedy scene. For me and it was like a Jerry Maguire moment.
Yeah.
For me.
You were writing your manifesto.
Yeah. So I was working for another company, and they were working for another a company another company as well. And it was just getting to a point where there was a lot of creative, a lot of professional, a lot of personal turmoil on my end, and to a certain extent on their ends as well. Yeah. And it was having a Jerry Maguire moment, going, the reason why these things are being created, or this drama is being that's been put upon us and many others, was there was a lack of diversity in the scene. So, I worked for two venues, one in New York and one in Los Angeles, for content creators.
Sure.
Venues with content creation portions, where diversity, I would be the only person of color, and I'm slightly brown. I mean, my family's from the Middle East, but I'd be the only person of color in any given room, or the mindset would be like, oh, I guess I'm the odd man out. But it takes you a while to kind of realize that there is something you can do about it, just you can't do it within the realms of those two
Sure.
areas, and it was I've shared this with friends, and calling it a Jerry Maguire moment was definitely like, we're doing, at the last gig I had, we were not creating the best content.
Mm-hmm.
We were not producing the best shows. A lot of it really fell on the idea of what Elsa Waith would say, the mediocrity of white men.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm working on the whims of the mediocrity of white men.
Exactly. No, yeah, I know what that means.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also that means also a lot of good, talented white men weren't getting anywhere as well.
Sure.
So, and that's the thing about mediocrity. It hurts everybody.
Exactly.
So I'm working at a place where it's mediocre, and at the same time, egos were involved. It was LA, so it was very show business.
Right.
Like there'd be parties where I would be the center of attention. Like the bosses would be like, "That guy, thumbs up."
Right.
And then if something goes like amiss a little bit, you're gonna go like, "This guy sucks."
Yeah.
So there was a lot of that, and then there was a lot of just not doing the best work. So though, long story short, my two friends were working for another company, and they were at a big conglomerate, which keeps opening and shutting down the video division always. Every year something new would happen to their video division. So we were like, we just want to do our own thing. Like we just want to do our own thing, and they're two white guys.
Yeah.
We just want to do our own thing. Like they like wrestling. That'd be great, and we produce a wrestling pilot that hopefully gets picked up.
Oh, that would be cool.
Which would be cool, but hopefully gets picked up by one of the big internet companies. They're paying for it.
Nice.
But the notion of the experiment was, and we jokingly say this, was the reason why we came to that title or for that name was that, yeah, it's going to be an experiment because we're going to do something different. That's the idea. We're going to see how far we can take this idea and create a thing where we're not celebrating mediocrity. We're not celebrating
what's been done before.
What's been done before. We're not, there's I don't know. I'm trying to figure out where I can legally say.
Sure.
Yeah, show business stuff. I can legally say. When I was at the last job, one of the hosts of the web series was the girlfriend of the person who was running the entire thing. It was this person's brand. And when they broke up, there was a ban on her. Like she was blacklisted. She couldn't work. This is millions of dollars were involved in this.
Goodness.
This wasn't like a high school production.
No, this is like real world
stuff.
Shit.
Yeah. So there was a ban, and everybody was like, okay. Like we were all okay. That's an example of something going, oh my God, I think that's why we start having these Jerry Maguire moments going, I think we're in a really bad play. Like what's going on? Like we all went, sure, okay. And the job before then, I think a lot of people might deduce this, so I'm not saying it out loud. But a lot of people might deduce this. The job before then, there were issues with diversity, and they had to come up with diversity scholarships and stuff like that, and then claim that, look, we already have enough black people. We did it, And again, you start having these Jerry Maguire moments, going, what are we doing? Like, why am I here? What am I contributing to the larger scheme of things? Like, I love comedy. I love the idea of creating stuff, and then yet now I'm a cog in a machine going, yeah, sure, let's ban your girlfriend. Or your ex-girlfriend.
Let's ban your...
Why are we banning ex-girlfriends now? What's going on?
Yeah, that's not business. That's personal. To me, like the thing I thought of, and this is might be an odd comparison. The moment when Dr. Dre realized he had to leave Death Row Records because like engineers were getting like punched for rewinding tapes too far, and just stupid.
Yeah,
stupid, personal, like childish kind of things.
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
A business environment.
There is a lot of that in every business. And we see that now in politics a lot. But the notion that we're on the basically we're working for crazy people.
Yeah.
We're working for people that don't care about the product itself. They don't care at the end of the day. They want their name out there.
Mm-hmm.
They want their brand out there. They want the loyalty, but they don't care about what's going on the stage. They don't care what's going on the podcast. They don't care what's going on in web shoots or whatever. They don't care. And if someone questions them,
Mm-hmm.
not in a negative criticism sort of way, just shitting on an idea.
Yeah.
If it questions them as if like, hey, I have an idea. Why don't we just hire anybody for this? Instead of looking at white guys or instead of looking at white women or whatever, like instead of why don't we open?
Why limit yourself?
Why limit ourselves? Or or in the opposite direction, going, hey, why are we banning ex-girlfriends? Why are we not? Like why are we involved in this personal stuff? This is a business.
Yeah.
And we're here to have fun. That a lot of that started becoming the norm of these other places that I worked at. And again, it's not to say that when I say I have Jerry Maguire moments, it meant that I was going along with them.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going, well, something's up. Something's up. And it wasn't as what people call woke.
Yeah.
So you see the lack of women in comedy. And I, for a long time, didn't care,
Mm-hmm.
And I say that as in like it wasn't on my radar.
Yeah.
So it doesn't let me off the hook. I just wasn't on my radar. It wasn't a thing I was concerned about. Or you see the lack of black people on an improv team or so forth. And you're kind of like, well, maybe everybody should work harder or whatever that bullshit.
Right.
Whatever excuse you try to come up with. And the experiment just comes going, hey, we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to be a bit more, and if, we're going to be a bit more open-minded, but if also I fail or I'm failing at someone calls me out on it, I'm not going to tell them to go fuck off.
Yeah.
Or I'm not going to ignore. It's like, oh, okay, well, I didn't know. That's good to know. And, I'm open to that type of criticism. I'm open to that type of criticism going, hey, I think your open mics, and I'm trying to be a bit more mindful right now, because not all of we don't have, most of our open mics are run by men, and I think only 2 or 3 are run by women, and we have a lot of open mics. So I'm trying to be a bit more mindful. So I'm trying to I know we're trying to start one soon that's on Saturday nights, and hopefully that's only the 2 hosts are women.
Sure. Yeah, exactly.
But it's trying to keep mindful of stuff like that. Going, that would create a decent atmosphere for a lot of people. People who would feel more comfortable. Certain people would come in, they're like, oh, okay, good. I'm not going to be introduced as Cleavage McGee.
No, yeah.
By the shitty open mic host, and stuff like that. So trying to be a bit more, and not be that defensive.
Yeah.
'Cause I've seen that, and that's the thing that's idiotic.
Oh yeah, and people can be like, if people are just automatically defensive, nothing ever gets done. If everyone's so like, I'm not what that, like, they just, if people automatically like just recoil immediately and don't have that, oh, okay, I didn't think about that.
Yes.
About it like that, because that's something I am trying to be aware of as well. Like at my own monthly show, I'm trying to be aware of like, hey, let me make sure that I've got a diverse lineup. Let me make sure I have a lot of different people on the show. And my other thing is, and I don't know how, if this is the right way to go about it too, I try not to bring too much attention. I don't try to like label that's what I'm doing. 'Cause my show is a gimmicky show. I've got a hook in which I give comics a joke topic on stage. But if I book a show where it's mostly women or like black men or gay people, I'm not going to label it as that.
Yeah,
because that was something when I was working at a comedy club that I thought was annoying, was the ladies' night.
It's a ladies' night. Yeah, this is gay night. Yeah,
exactly. It's like, we can just be comedians, and we can just be funny on stage in the way that we are, and that can be good.
Oh, no, I think for the most part, yes. I think if you're trying to market it, for example, for an audience that knows this is an all-ladies show, then by all means. I think marketing is different than than strutting around going, look at me, I did an all ladies.
Right.
thing.
Exactly.
Marketing, I think, is a little more different. It's you're trying not to be too crass or whatever, because I know people hate selling out or whatever the notion is, but you want butts in the seats.
Sure.
So to a certain extent, maybe not calling it ladies' night or whatever, some cheesy thing, but like, using just pussy as an example. When you're saying it's just pussy,
yeah,
that's what it is,
and that's funny. That's
funny.
Now you see, now if
they're marketing their show with a great title, and then you know where you're gonna go, you know what you're watching.
Exactly, and the same way as a I'm in the comedy community, but I consider myself a purveyor of comedy as well.
Yeah.
I would be more inclined to go to a show called Just Pussy than I would just Ladies' Night at insert at the Chuckle Hut or what have you.
Yeah.
That's my favorite fake name for a comedy club.
Chuckle Hut.
I have a pilot I wrote that I need to rewrite where it's set in a comedy club and I call it the Chuckle Hut.
The Chuckle Hut.
It's just a perfect like fake name.
Yeah. Also, by the way, I'm really sorry. I'm trying not to be too specific about the places I worked at.
Oh no, it's okay. I don't want you to get in trouble. It's I think we're having an interesting and well thought conversation.
That's the idea. The idea is sort of like pointing out the foibles at that I've experienced, and it's not saying that this is the experience of everybody.
Mm-hmm.
This is not the experience of everybody that worked at these locations, for example. But these are my experiences, and going, okay, well, and then taking a lot of the good. Yeah. Taking a lot of the good, the marketing and the sort of the showman aspect of the last job that I was at, and kind of keeping a social media presence and so forth for myself. But then, or the organizational structure of the job before that, but then going the negatives I want to change, and I couldn't. There was no way I would change those negatives at those locations. I just have to start my own thing. And try to keep those negatives to a minimum.
Exactly.
And that's the idea. And, I've banned people from here, but only because they have harmed others. I've banned.
Which is an excellent reason.
It's a great reason. I've banned
one of the best reasons.
I've banned only 4 people, and they all have harmed a person. So, that's good. But I'm not going to ban an ex or whatever, just because I'm mad at her. I don't, trying to keep this place safe for everybody who wants to be here. Again, it's not forcing everybody to be here. For anybody who wants to be here, it's safe. It's a safe space. If I'm in the middle of a fight with a friend, I don't want that friend to not come, because this is a safe space. Again, and everybody makes their own decisions, but I'm not going to have a decree and go, well, that person's now banned because we broke up and so and so. Whatever. I don't want to do that.
Yeah. Well, that's
silly.
Right.
But that's also that taints the business. That taints the fun aspect of it. And a lot of it then comes. A lot of that comes with some really bad implications. So if you're banning an ex-girlfriend, for example, part of you is misogynistic, and then that's a larger than issue we have to deal with, and that's so it's not just a personal thing. It's like now it becomes now we're going to talk about real world shit.
Yeah. Every time I see a comic do a bit that leans pretty heavy on misogyny or women are bitches, what I'm thinking is, no, you have one very specific person in your mind. I want to know that story, because I think that'd be a fun.
And that's fine. If a male comic wants to go up there and talks about an ex-girlfriend who's a shitty human being, by all means do that. But if you're like, women are bitches, you're like, I don't know, dude. Maybe the people you date,
exactly. But I think if people got really specific, that'd be more interesting. Maybe that's just the storyteller side of me. That's.
That's all. I think that's all a comedy. That should be. I mean, your story is the funniest story. It's not your perspective is the funniest perspective. It's not the notion, not something that you picked up on Reddit.
Yeah, exactly. It's not the cookie cutter that's gonna drop you into a slot, but it's gonna be you.
There was I don't even, and a good thing I don't remember this kid's name. I was never gonna mention his name, but I don't remember his name. But and I say kid because when we started doing open mics, the first place we did in New York. So I moved back after.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember. You were in Los Angeles for a while, but you grew up in Egypt.
No, I grew up in Brooklyn.
Oh, you grew up in Brooklyn.
I grew up in New York. Yeah.
Okay.
My family's from Egypt, so I grew up in Brooklyn.
That's right.
Yeah. And after the idea of the experiment came, I moved back here again. I was also dealing with depression and suicidal tendencies, so I moved back here to be near family. Mm-hmm. And
what year was that?
2013. So I moved here. I moved back September 2013. And then one of the things I was encouraged to do was like just keep going out and stuff like that. And then I like comedy and so forth. And
what was your exposure to comedy when you were younger?
Mostly television. I mean, TV movies, like my favorite movies growing up were mostly comedies.
Like what?
Well, Ghostbusters was one I really liked as a kid a lot. And I like the new one too. I like the new one too. I thought it was I laughed. Yeah. For me, it was a Marvel movie, so they made it for kids.
Yeah.
I liked what they were doing. I could have used more Melissa McCarthy and Leslie Jones, like, being themselves in that movie, but I get they're trying to aim at kids, but I liked it. It was better than Ghostbusters 2, so.
I do agree. I do agree with that. We're gonna, I'll defend that.
Yeah, I don't think anybody, I mean, it was better than Ghostbusters 2, guys. There was laughs and there was a coherent story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also thought Kate McKinnon, every time she was like doing, she just makes me laugh every time I look at her.
I think that character is the single best character created in the Ghostbusters universe. Like, that character was so out there, but I think that's also the studio not interfering. I think they interfered with everything else, and then they're like, I don't know. I think the studio notes are like, we have no, whatever, okay, go do your thing. I don't.
Sure.
Someone shrugged because we can't. And then everybody else was a little muted.
Right. So Ghostbusters, who else? Did you enjoy stand-up when you were younger, or was that later?
I started watching stand-up for real. You know what? The first memory of a stand-up set I saw, the first memory was Sam Kinison, and it shouldn't have been Sam Kinison. But I think it was like one of those Saturday nights where I could stay up a little later than usual, because it's you're a kid and it's a Saturday night. This is probably like 6-7 years old, so I should not at all know Sam Kinison. But I guess my dad always watched HBO on Saturday nights. You know, there's always like some action movie or something like that. So, you get to see a Clint Eastwood movie or Stallone movie or whatever. And afterwards, it was always a comedy thing. Or at least in my memory, it was always a comedy thing, like 10:30. And Sam Kinison was on. And now I don't know if it was a stand-up special, his own stand-up special, or if it was a Rodney Dangerfield special. But he did a bit about how his wife cutting his dick off.
That's a young comedian special.
It's a young comedian special, right? Okay.
And he unplugs the microphone from the cable and he just tosses the mic in the air.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, of course, you're 7 years old and the potty humor is already developing. That was the funniest thing. That was the funniest thing. And then putting it in the freezer, and I was like, there's a dick in a freezer. That's insane. So Sam Kinison has a straightforward stand-up set, but people doing their thing, like Robin Williams and like Mork and Mindy was basically like, here's 2 minutes of Robin doing his shtick, and then here's the plot. So definitely those guys. I started
kind of big personality.
The big personality guy. Well, yeah, they're the most attractive to a kid.
Yeah.
You're like, whoa, that guy's crazy. And then I really started getting into comedy in my teens, SNL, and really sticking with the Saturday nights at 10 on HBO type of, like, I would tape the Jerry Seinfeld specials.
Yeah.
Started watching Chris Rock, and I really like Chris Rock. I think my favorite special of all time is Bigger and Blacker.
I think that's. I think that was actually one of the first. I think that was actually one of the first stand-up specials I sat down and watched.
Yeah.
Because when I started learning what stand-up was, I remember, because I'd heard like a Jeff Foxworthy album when I was a kid, or Bill Cosby's himself when I was in fifth grade.
Yeah, I saw that as a kid too.
And then when I first started getting into like, oh, lots of people do comedy, I remember Jim David's half hour on Comedy Central.
Oh yeah, I remember Jim David.
Yeah, he had this bit where he was talking about his partner, and he actually says, I don't want to call him my partner because then it sounds like we own a law firm. And he was doing his dad asking, what do you do? And then he says, oh, Dad, you know all that stuff you want Mom to do, but she won't? That. And I still think about that joke every now and then.
It's a really funny joke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, the first hour I sat down and watched I remember watching was Bigger and Blacker. I had that on DVD, and I was like, oh, yeah. Clinton thinks the Columbine's good for him because it gets people not talking about him anymore. and all those bits. Like, his bits are just like, they're well informed, but they're still going to get you like a crowd hooping and hollering as well.
The only person I've consistently paid hundreds of dollars for to see is Chris Rock. The only comic. Everybody else, like, I've been very lucky to see Louis test out material at smaller venues. I've been very lucky to see all the other, like, you get to see everybody working in this business. I've been working since 2002. And it's cool to see Maron, and it's cool to see Louis, and Dave Chappelle to a certain, like, he wasn't coming in too much, but like, it's great to see everybody, but they're also working on material. Janine Garofalo, who's part of the alt scene, or she straddles both.
Yeah, she kind of is in both.
But Chris Rock is the only person I've consistently paid money for to see him at an arena.
Yeah.
And it's great. And the only time I've seen him, I saw him, and he didn't deserve this, but he ate it. It was 2004, 2005.
And was this in L.A. or New York?
No, this is New York. This is
Comedy Cellar, maybe?
This is no. He ate it at the theater in Madison Square Garden. And,
really?
And it's not his fault. He ate it because he's the first comic I heard outside of the Daily Show, because the Daily Show is still niche, by the way. Outside of the Daily Show, up there trying to do a George W. Bush lie joke, and he started talking about the WMDs. And it was great because he goes, they didn't find anything. Yeah, everybody knows. And he started getting it, and I thought he was getting somewhere where it was pretty funny, but then half of that audience booed him. And then he was like, fuck you, and fuck you. You guys want to be lied to, continue, but I'm going to do my joke. And it was great. I know, but the thing that really hanged the situation was that he was getting ready for another HBO special. So then there was all these HBO people there, because that special eventually. I think it's the one.
Never Scared.
I think it's Never Scared. The one that was filmed in DC.
Yeah, that was at DAR Constitution Hall.
So that's the special he's working on, and so we're sitting in nosebleeds. Me and my friend, we're in the layman's section. We're with real people.
Yeah,
and then down below, so James Gandolfini and Sarah Jessica Parker, like people who were like big HBO people at the time. And then there was a who's who in New York, Steve Buscemi and those dudes. It was down there they were booing him. Us in the nosebleeds, like the regular citizens,
right?
We loved it, but it was the HBO people. They were booing him. And that was insane. That was insane to me. That was the first time I realized that we were like really polarized, because I voted for Gore, and then of course it was the thing in 2000, and whether Bush or not stole the election and shit.
Right.
And
so
then
it's very politically charged time.
But this is the first time I saw comedy like like that idea. Again, like for me, Chris Rock was a truth teller, and to see him get challenged by the audience, and I thought wrongly so. So he it took him a while to get back into the set. It took him a while because they didn't like what he was saying, because they were like, we were with you up until you called our president a liar, even though he did lie.
Right.
You're unpatriotic, basically.
Yeah.
Like Chris Rock just
people were in denial at the time.
It was so weird. It was so weird, but it was a great.
Fascinating.
But that's the only moment I could really point out in comedy. I go, oh, someone took a stand and the audience hated him for it. But it was a good stand. It was a righteous stand. It was a Carlin-esque stance. It was a Lenny Bruce style stance. It was a Richard Pryor stance. He took that stance in front of an audience that you would assume would just be okay with it, but they hated him for it.
Or give him a pass. And the theater at Madison Square Garden, that's a big room to have half the people booing you. You got to have convictions to continue.
I mean, I might be
continue your
exaggerating
shit.
saying half, but that definitely in that front section where it was the rich people.
The rich people. I was thinking that too. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
the rich people did.
No, there's the people who can afford, and this is, I want to say this is right before the convention, because
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to remember when that was, because the convention was also at Madison Square. The Republican convention was also at Madison Square Garden. This is the 2004 one, and so this whole, yeah, I mean that was, yeah, there was a zeitgeist there, but Chris Rock really, I thought he did great, but
Yeah.
that was a time where I go, wasn't the PC police.
Right.
That wasn't a PC police trying to shut him down. That was the other side.
Exactly. That was the 1%. That was the money. That was the money talking.
Yeah.
So that was in 2003. Were you doing? Because you were a comedian first before you were
I started taking improv classes.
improv classes. Okay.
Well, when I started doing comedy, I started off as professionally as an improviser. And I say professionally is because I started working for that venue
Sure. Yeah.
as like maybe a class in, because it wasn't even an internship. They threw me into the tech booth.
Yeah.
To tech. So I've been working since 2002. So that was, and so performing, so it was improv, some character stuff. Never really got into, I didn't personally jump into stand up until about the end of 2013.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So I was mostly just I was performing, hosting stuff, but I wasn't writing my own material until 2013. Yeah, so it took me about 11 years to get there.
Oh, I see.
Creatively, yeah.
No, I can relate to that. I went to school to be an actor, and I didn't discover stand up until my senior year.
I did film school.
Films. I minored in film. That was my thing. I've made a couple shorts. I want to write. I would actually like to write more and try to come up with like micro budget ideas that can be done like a bottle episode of a TV show.
That's the beauty of the web now.
That's what I would like to do.
Yeah, technology and the internet really did a lot. Honestly, like the stuff I learned at film school did not apply at all. No.
Me neither. We shot stuff on a Bolex. If anyone listening doesn't know what a Bolex is, imagine the camera Mark Cohen has in the movie version of Rent. That's what a Bolex is.
Yeah.
So old school, like learning about exposures and stuff. And
I liked splicing film. That was my favorite thing to do.
Oh yeah.
In film school, just taking spools and editing by hand. I'm pretty decent editing on the computer digitally, but by hand, I don't know. It was that was the only time I've ever went, yeah, I'm an idiot savant. That was the only time I was like, yeah, this is the best.
Yeah.
This is the best thing I've ever done. Because I knew I don't know how, I just knew instinctively how to win the cut and stuff. And that was great.
Yeah.
But that's the only time I've ever been secure. I'm the best at, if you have old film, I'm the best at splicing it and then putting it together and getting the beats down exactly the way I want it.
Spectacular. I'm that way with, like, when I edit this, because I have music that weaves in and out in between when I talk up front and then when I go into the interview, and I recorded and all my own music that I was pretty excited about. Just being able to do just the confidence boost from like, oh, I can do all this stuff and I don't have to ask for help. Yeah, it's just really great.
That's pretty much that's the new wave of comedy.
I think so. Is there something you haven't done yet or created yet that you want to do?
Well, right now we're working on a web series. It's an anthology series that centers around the venue, but the venue's not the focus. The idea is so there are a couple open mic comics writing. There's a handful of open mic comics just writing their own experiences. And the idea was just to make this a central location or an important location, but not make it important to the story. So their experiences are going at open mics, or a girl meets a guy and you see this little cute little romantic comedy, but they met here and so forth.
Yeah.
So we're working on that right now. But I like to do more video content.
So would I. I need a reason to sit down and hammer out a script, because I have a pilot that is sent in a comedy club that I need to punch it up.
Yeah.
Because I had a TV writer look at it and he was like, it's good. It's a pretty often pitched idea, but it's good. You just need more jokes.
Yeah.
So I want to do something like that. I also had this idea, and I'll just put it out there and hope no one else makes it before I get a chance to.
Copyright well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mo's my witness.
Yeah.
This again, comedy centered idea of a bunch of comedians that are trapped in a comedy club overnight while a riot ensues outside, and they have to, and it's basically them. It's Lord of the Flies kind of, where they're just sort of like getting through the night in a confined space and working out all of their differences.
That would be kind of great for our thing.
Yeah, that would be a good idea.
That would be great for our anthology.
Oh, we should do that. I could get a diverse group of comedians together, and we can just.
You just reminded me. I tried to pitch in 2008. So 2008, I did. I was very full of myself, so I went to London.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to London and I spent a couple of weeks there, and just to write, and I was really into British sitcoms at the time. And one thing I tried to pitch to Channel 4 over there, and it never went. It literally was like.
So you got a meeting with Channel 4?
Not even. It was
okay.
It was like a guy who knows an agent and sent it to Channel 4, and they're like, we don't care.
Okay.
But I was trying to pitch this thing to Channel 4 was, it also took place. It took place in an old venue, and it was a combination. You ever see Black Books?
Yeah.
So it was a combination of Black Books and Twin Peaks, and it was like it takes place at a venue that was underground, and there was a portal to hell,
mm-hmm.
and then like weird swamp monsters would show up, and then it was so basically like the interns would have to like deal with irate audience members and with comedians that have demands and stuff like that, and then they're like, oh, by the way, there's a swamp monster in the back, you just got to feed it, just make sure he doesn't come out. Especially during improv shows, he tags people out and stuff. Like, that's a problem. So
the monster just keeps
interrupting shit.
And he doesn't and he asks a lot.
What a jerk, yeah.
Questions. Completely changes the reality of the scene.
Yeah. And
swamp monster's bad at improv.
But it's really hard to explain to anybody outside of that universe, outside of that world, going, no, dude, it'd be funny. It'd be really funny. A layman would I don't know how to sell this to people, but I think it might be still a good idea.
I mean, I would want to see. I want to see that because
I think if we change it to the experiment, because I did do a web series. I eventually ended up doing a web series about about the second location I was working at.
Yeah,
and it was okay. It was a cult hit for a web show. Mm-hmm. I don't know how to explain it. I mean, there are web series that had more viewers.
Yeah.
Than this show, and I still get recognized a couple of times. I got recognized by a couple of people.
Oh, really?
To this day from that show. Well, it was on a thing,
mm-hmm.
And I also got recognized. I got recognized. Not me per se, my face, my name gets recognized because I'm mentioned a bunch on Harmontown.
Yeah,
I mention a bunch because usually like a thank you or Harmon will make fun of the last name because he couldn't pronounce it.
Sure.
And then Jeff Davidson will try to correct them. So then I've seen someone once sent me a Reddit link because Harmon was in this web series, and it was a bad web series. And I'm not saying the name because I won't get sued, but it was I was a showrunner. I know it's bad. And Harmon was in the web series. So someone sends me a Reddit link. Mm-hmm. The Reddit link, it was like / Harmontown, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And they're going on and they're shitting on the show. They're shitting on our show. Mm-hmm. And because they're upset that their hero, Dan Harmon's in the show.
Yeah.
It's like, why do we have to watch this bullshit or whatever? And they're shitting on our web series. They're shitting on the web series. Then one dude's like, I see it's produced by that guy, Mo Fathelbab. And I was like, You can't win them all, Mo. It was like this weird, like, oh, thanks, anonymous guy on Reddit. They were very, they were very. It was that was an interesting critique. I like that critique a lot because it was more like, yeah, we hate it, but you know what? Dan keeps mentioning this dude's name, so we assume he's a good guy. It's like the power of the internet.
I know.
Yeah, I mean that was fun. That was fun. Partly is because it was a shit show at the end.
Yeah.
The first season was okay. Second season's terrible, and second season's so bad that Paul F. Tompkins didn't promote it, and he was in it.
Oh yeah.
And I didn't need the validation that the second season was bad. I knew it was already bad, but it was this like it was some weird stranger on the internet going, shut. It was like some guy like tussling my hair, going, "Next time, kiddo," whatever it was. Right. It just felt so weird, but it was probably the best thing I've ever seen about myself on the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Usually, most part, people are very kind. You know, like, but there's mostly people that you know, like, or whatever. Like people I know who are like, man, it was a great time at the experiment. Love Mo, whatever. And it's very nice, and I'm very grateful that people express themselves that way. And sometimes people express themselves differently on the internet, and usually like, oh, fuck this place or fuck Mo, whatever. But that one in particular, that always stands out because there was some stranger somewhere in the world who is a fan of Community. So then thus he becomes a fan of Dan Harmon's podcast.
Yeah.
And that's how he knows my name. And then from that podcast, I was never on the podcast. It was like thank yous or whatever.
Sure.
And from there, he saw the web series, and he was like, oh, you can't win them all, Mo.
That should be your first comedy album title.
You can't win them all. Dan Harmon says so. I like Dan, by the way.
Oh, yeah, no.
And Dan. I would never talk about him in a negative light.
No, Dan, I think he seems like he's one of those guys I look at, and Dan Harmon, I just look at him, and he's so funny and brilliant. I'm amazed he hasn't like thrown himself off a cliff from his sheer.
I think he's amazed he hasn't thrown himself off a cliff.
I imagine so. Gosh, man, this has been really good.
Oh man, yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's see how do I want to end this, because I guess I'm always interested in this. What are some of the things that, because you've been in comedy for a long time and you now own a venue, what are some of the things that you love about comedians that you have, and then what are some of the things that comedians do that annoy you?
What I do love, I'm gonna start off with that. What I do love is, for the most part, that people, when they come and they try. That's my favorite thing, is when people try, and then they succeed Rudy style. That's because you see the evolution of a joke, and you see people who understand. Because a lot of comedians are young, and they're students of comedy. They might not have the mathematic formula for it, but they know they just got to keep working on it. And I like seeing. I'm gonna drop this kid's name because I really like him a lot, and I think he'll blow up soon. His name is Otto Fernandez, and so Otto. Actually, so the flyers that are up on the wall, he drew. Otto is a very quaint kid from East New York. Like, he's a little nerdy Urkel kid.
Yeah.
And he's proudly so. Like, half of his material is about Deep Space Nine. So, and he's very endearing, and you want to see him on stage, you know?
Yeah.
And he does host a mic here every week, but he's also like at most of our mics, and he goes into Karma and the Creek and other places, and he's constantly hustling. He's working his material, and he started working on this material about being mugged on the subway, and then being stuck with his mugger while waiting for the train to come. It's a very funny story that he tells, and I'm not doing any justice, so you have to listen to Otto when he talks about it. So Otto worked on this. So this bad thing happened to him, and then he started finding the funny in it. So he started working on it for a few weeks, and then we were doing the Cinderblock Festival, and I'm co-hosting a show, and we were short a person, and I was like, dude, do you want to just come up and just do this portion? You know, just do like 8 minutes. And he goes, cool, okay, cool. And he's very, very. He's not going to say no. It's a stage time. He's a nice guy, and it's stage time, and it's in front of people, so he's not going to say no. So I was like, oh, great, this is awesome. So he goes up there and he tells that story and he kills. So that I saw the evolution from the day after the crime to him going up on stage. And he had this LA comic. She was dying on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
She's experienced. She's a veteran. You know, she was in town for the festival, but she's watching roughly a newbie. He's 2 years into comedy, 2 years into open mics.
Yeah.
She's roughly new compared to her.
To her, yeah.
And she's bawling. She's bawling because this kid's killing. Like, he's telling a story, and it's the funniest fucking thing she's ever heard.
Mm-hmm.
And that I love seeing that. I like seeing the evolution of the comics. And for the most part, people try. I mean, you would attest to this. Like, everybody's trying, so nobody's purposely. Most people aren't purposely shitty. People are just trying, and they want to work on a bit. Sometimes bits don't work, and they drop it. And sometimes they know there's a thing that's there, and they're, you know, a couple of tweaks, a couple of times you got to practice it, and she or he, you know, hopefully one day they're working on their swing, and hopefully one day they get to hit a home run.
Yeah.
And he hit a grand slam that night, and it was so amazing to watch. What's a bad thing? I would say one thing that annoys me is the boyfriends of comedians. That's the only thing.
Just boyfriends? All spouses?
No, just boyfriends. 'Cause I'm going to say this. When a woman's here supporting her boyfriend or girlfriend, she's supporting the shit out of them. They're great. And I love them.
I can attest from experience.
Yeah.
That is.
When a boyfriend is here, he wants free shit. He's always like, I'm with her. It's like, I don't know you, dude. I have no fucking clue. And he's always off to the side. Like, you see the girlfriend of the boy of the male or female comic at least interacting with other people. And he's like, you know, everybody's like, hey, so you're so and so. You're dating her. Oh, that's great. And you're telling a story. But the boyfriend's always off to the side, sort of like, oh. She or he, it's usually she brought me here to the thing. And it's like, well, I'm with her. It's like, you gotta, dude, I don't know. My intern doesn't know that you're her. My intern's not being a dick to you. My intern wants, you know, they see a stranger and they're asking them to pay for their admission. That's all. Yeah, I don't know why. Lately, maybe that's a pet peeve. Maybe it's a pet peeve of mine, people coming in and going, I own the place. It's like, no, you don't. I do. Everybody else here works here and everybody's working hard. And maybe it's a male thing. Maybe it's
a male. I think that might be like a male insecurity thing, because I think there are very few men whose insecurity manifests itself as like depression or sadness.
Yeah.
So too many men, it manifests itself as anger and aggression. And I'm not painting. I'm not even saying that's across the sexes, because
not all men. Hashtag not all men.
not all men do that.
Don't.
And also, not all women are immune to not doing that.
MRA guys, don't email Will.
Yes,
not
please,
all men.
please don't email me.
Don't email me. I don't want to. I'm not gonna read your email.
Yeah. What I am gonna do, because I imagine if at some point I will get hate on the internet from someone, I would love to turn their hate into a song. And then sell that song and then donate all the money to GLAAD. Or whatever
they hate.
They're just decided.
Most likely a women's group. Most likely you got to send it to most likely some dudes will be like, fucking idiot, and then you're like, oh great, no problem, dude, and then you send the money off to Planned Parenthood or something.
That'll be the thing I'll do.
Yeah, dudes on the internet, come on.
Yeah, well, at least we're carving out our own nook of not the worst dudes on the internet.
Yeah,
that's what I'm trying to do.
We're doing the bare minimum.
Yeah.
I feel like we're doing the bare minimum technically makes us not the worst.
Yeah. Well, I think you're doing much more than that. I think I think the venue is a really important thing that exists, and I'm going to be here in a couple weeks doing some shows, so I'm looking forward to that.
Are you going to plug it at the end of the show?
Yeah,
right?
at the intro.
Do you plug your own stuff, right?
Oh yeah, I plug my stuff. I got to get the.
You're going to be at the Chuckle Hut.
Yeah, I'll be at the Chuckle Hut, and then after that, the Experimental Comedy Gallery in October, guys. Mo, thanks for doing this.
Thank you. Well, yeah, this is fun.
Thank you, man.
All right, buddy.
Okay, folks, that's our show. Thank you for listening. You can go to my website, willcarriesfunny.com, for a list of my upcoming stand-up dates. You can also subscribe, rate, and review Between Awesome and Disaster on iTunes. We're also on Stitcher. Any support is greatly appreciated. And if you enjoyed the show, feel free to tell a friend, because that's how we create a community, which is something that I would love to have happen with this show. And again, I'll be at the Experimental Comedy Gallery for 2 shows, 8 and 9:30 on October 24th. And thank you again for listening. I'll see you next week between Awesome and Disaster. Take care, everyone.